I'm Fred McMurray, and we're back with Steve Liberty Jr. of Harbor Freight Transport. Harbor Freight, for those who don't know, have been around for 3 generations, and they make your shipping stuff easier. Today, we're going to talk about overdimensional trucking issues and how Harbor Freight Transport helps. Steve, what is overdimensional trucking?
Well, I guess you could say that overdimensional trucking is anything that is outside of the legal um, DOT standard for moving cargo without needing to get a permit or an escort. So anything that's wide, high, or heavy.
So, like when I see somebody moving a house down the road, that would be considered overdimensional trucking.
Yeah, yes, Fred. So anything that's over 102 inches wide would be an over wide load. Anything that's over 13 foot 6 would be over height. And anything that has a gross vehicle weight of over 80,000 pounds would be considered overweight. And then, you would need certain permits and escorts to move as it gets wider, higher, and or heavier. The permitting and escorting process can get more complicated to move those types of cargoes.
All right. So what little I know about the trucking industry is there's short haul and long haul. And how does Harbor Freight handle short haul?
So a lot of the OOG trucking that we do is for the flat racks and open tops that we're picking up from the local piers here in New Jersey, where our warehouse is located, and in Savannah, Georgia, where we're located. We're picking those imports up. We're bringing them back to our warehouse for transloading. Also to reverse on the export when we're loading a flat rack or an open top that's out of gauge and returning to the port. So we're unique in the sense that here in New Jersey, because we're based inside of Port Newark Elizabeth Marine Terminal, if we're returning to MAR Terminal or APM Terminal or PNCT Terminal, we actually do not have any restrictions because we are technically on Marine Terminal property right here. So that's one of the things that sets us apart from moving OOG in New York and New Jersey, whether it's import or export flat racks to be transloaded here. If we're moving those types of flat racks or open tops that are OOG from Port Liberty, New York, or Port Liberty, Bayonne, that's when we have to get permits because we are large, we are out of gauge. Sometimes we require escorts to move those flat racks back to our facility. We also partner really closely with Port Liberty, Bayonne, and New York on having them transload the cargo on terminal if it's too tall so that we can move it back on our double drops and our low boys back to our facility for then distribution to our clients or for final delivery.
All right. So there's a lot to unpack there. You're in the marine terminals, you said in New Jersey, was it?
Yeah, in Port Newark Elizabeth Marine Terminal.
All right. So when anything's coming in there, you don't have to have any permitting, any escorts, anything like that, because you're staying on their property, correct?
That's correct. Our warehouse and yard is located right inside Port Newark Elizabeth Marine Terminal. So anything that we're moving to and from the 3 terminals I mentioned, MAR, APM, or PNCT, no permits required at all. We're on private property. So believe our max height is 21 feet overall. That would be cargo, flat rack or open top, and trailer. So that's pretty high.
So what's the weirdest thing you remember coming in that was overdimensional?
Oh, wow. Weirdest thing. I mean, I don't know. We handle a lot of different things. So it's a lot of uh, generators, engines. We handle a lot of, we've handled some really neat flight simulator modules. We handle a lot of military vehicles. It's hard to say. It's a lot of cool stuff. Let's just say.
Okay. We'll have to get some video of that for
Sure.
all right. So there's an as long as you're short hauling, there's no permitting issue. I'm assuming there's no.
Only in the port where we're located. Correct.
Okay. So if you're
Yeah.
shipping out somewhere else, Then there's permitting, there's route restrictions. You need potentially an escort. Um, what other issues are there for overdimensional trucking?
Right, like you said, I mean, if you're moving over the road, I mean, without getting into too much detail, but the wider you get, first of all, anything over 102 wide, like I said, or 13'6" high, and that's overall, that's cargo and the trail that you're moving on. So the higher you go with a piece of cargo, the lower trail you try to get to bring that overall height down. But anything over that 102 wide or 13'6" high, you need to get a permit. It begins very simply. Just sometimes you're applying for a permit. If you go into multiple states, you have to apply in multiple states for that permit. But certain things to look out for are bridge crossings. Here in New Jersey, we're close to New York City and upstate New York. There are certain restrictions as far as crossing the bridges, right, into the five boroughs maybe, or going up into the New England area if you need to take a bridge versus the thruway. So there's a lot of coordination that goes into setting up an OG or out of gauge move, even sometimes within 30, 40 miles a year if you're just going into the five boroughs or the Long Island area. But again, if we're just transloading here, even coming out of those container terminals coming back here, our team in the dispatch does a really good job coordinating all of that, making sure we have the necessary equipment, our double drop low boys that extend out to accommodate a 40-foot container in the well to bring those back to our facility. One thing to mention is down in Savannah, Georgia, where we're located, we're able to transload right on the terminal. So when we're doing out of gauge there, we have a lot of high pieces that we're transloading right on the terminal onto our low boys to move it back to our facility. We're only one of the few vendors that are even able to do that down there.
Okay, sorry about that ringing, folks. Somebody refused to quit trying to call me. Um,
We couldn't hear it, Fred. It's okay.
okay, that's good. I could. That'd drive me up a wall. So one thing I want to ask you is, with all this overdimensional, um, overdimensional size stuff, I would expect there would be um, liability, excuse me, liability or insurance issues. Can you speak to that at all? Is it something where there's more insurance, more liability issues the bigger it gets? Um,
So, I mean, no, normally the only reason why you would need more insurance is if the value of something is very high and the cargo owner would like you to purchase additional insurance to cover it or raise your limit of liability. We carry a lot of insurance because we also transport a lot of hazardous materials. So in general, we have enough insurance to cover all the OG loads that we're moving as well.
okay, so actually, you hit a really interesting comment there. I'm assuming not all hazardous materials are OG loads, but for OG loads that are hazardous material, are there any special handling restrictions, things like that you have to deal with?
As long as the driver is a hazardous endorsed driver, no, not 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 normally, no.
Okay, so the only difference is that the driver has to be hazardous endorsed.
To pull a hazardous load, correct. And we're just talking about normal hazardous here, right? I mean, we're not getting into the real crazy, nasty stuff. We're talking about normal, maybe like a class 3 or something like a flammable liquid, a little flammable gas. Most of the OG loads aren't. They just have usually maybe a compressed gas inside just to keep moisture out, things like that, or they're charged with something, or they might have some hazmat, some flammable things like that nature in it. But it's normally OG is what we're concerned about when we're moving something that's fairly large.
All right, so what about you use the phrase crazy stuff. What about the crazy hazmat stuff? Give us
That would be like a poison inhalation gas zone A, where that's the real nasty stuff. So
ooh, we'll have to get a case study on that.
yes.
All right, Steve, what would you like to leave our listeners, watchers, with on how Harbor Freight Transport can reduce the issues they have with overdimensional trucking?
Well, I mean, I would probably say that again because we have been around for so long, right? 78 years in the port for 52 years this year. And we've been handling OG now for God, well over 30 years here in the port. We just have a lot of experience. We've kind of seen it all. We have great relationships with the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey, great relationships with all the terminal operators, work very closely with them and their yard departments to make sure that we all have necessary appointments. We get in and out in a timely manner. We work very closely with them. Our dispatch department has a lot of experience moving these loads. Our yard, again, 30, 40 plus years experience in our yard of people that have been handling this type of cargo. So we just make it really easy and seamless for you to handle here. Savannah, Georgia, again, we were only there for a little over a year and a half now, but great relationship with the Savannah, Georgia Port Authority to the point where we're now only one of a few vendors that are allowed on terminal to transload out of gauge flat racks and open tops on terminal property to move them off. Talking about the ones that we can't move out intact for transloading at our warehouse, the really, really big ones. So I would just say it's our experience and our expertise in this just from handling it for so many years.
So your experience and expertise reduces the cost and stress for your clients. That what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Fred.
All right. We'll be back again with another episode with Steve Liberty Jr. of Harbor Freight. Have a great week, folks.
Rolling in like the steel tide.